What's up, man?
What's going on, bro?
Got another day in
Everybody,
paradise,
what is
man.
going on? We are just two guys trying to figure it out. Today, we're going to talk about 2023 and 2024. Just unpack it.
All right, let's jump right in, dude. What was 2023 like for you?
Interesting year it has been. So, um, 2023 for me was actually the gist of it overall was kind of like a year of realization. There was a lot of things that kind of happened that just put overall growth and knowledge base gain into perspective. So a lot of the things that I did this year ended up just kind of reminding me of progress that I've made and how I've been able to just kind of grow over time or how I've grown over time. Some of that consciously, some of that subconsciously. One of the biggest things that I decided to do this year, and I made a decision early in the year, was to be better in every aspect than I have been in the past in my entire life. So, one of the things that I was very active and very good at in the past was being an athlete. I was active, I was playing baseball, I went to college for college sports, and I wanted to get back into a better physical position than I was when I was 22, 24, um, actively playing college baseball. Physically, I'm now older. Obviously, I'm 30, so it's a little bit more difficult. But I think that there's a there's an attitude and a mental unlock that I have there. I feel like there was some aspect of me, some drive, some level of I don't even really know how to word it, but besides drive, that was in me that I lost when I stopped playing those sports. There was a portion of me that had meaning and drive that was given by those sports that when I was no longer able to do that, it seemed like it'd gone away. And for some reason, I feel like accomplishing a level of goal in that area at a later age will wake me back up to that in a way that I can actually apply that different into different parts of my life. Um, the thing that I was honestly most confident about in the past was playing sports. It was my physical ability to be in shape, to continue to put in work, and to strive towards something. And for some reason, over the course of, let's just say, life, that's gone away. So I made the decision to try to actively play baseball again. In that, I've started to get physically fit. I've started to work out and train specifically for baseball to be better than I was when I was at that age. In doing so, I hurt myself. I tore my labrum at the gym. So
That's
that
not good.
was that was a very interesting situation because I never hurt myself physically to where I had to recover when I was younger. So it really put into perspective where I sit now and how I approach certain things. Because when I was younger, I was just kind of just like go, 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 go. And the what I had in my mind as hard work was the physical nonstop grind, when in reality there's a certain point in your life when you can do that, and now I'm not necessarily in that same position to be able to do that, so I have to take a break and step back and learn how I'm actually working and how I'm moving forward and how I actually take time to rest, because in the past that was not something that I did. So starting this journey, starting to get physical, starting to get active, looking for that drive again, caused me to get back into that same place where I was pushing too much back in the day, but I just happened to be younger and not have, like, I didn't get hurt or anything because of my age. Whereas now it's not, I wouldn't say it's because of my age, I'm still young, but now I have to kind of build that base up that I had. And that is a very big realization for me, because that's true for anything that you start, right? I had a level of success in this, and I'm here now. So now I have to put in all of that work that I did before to get to the same level. But the way that I'm doing it now, I understand and I can physically apply that into different aspects of my life. So it's kind of realizing what hard work is and what too much work is, because I was just being too physically fit and not too physically active. Like I was in the gym, I was working out, I was trying to get stronger, but I was also on the field doing drills, trying to get better and throwing. So it was just too much at one time, which is kind of how I personally have just been approaching life. And 2024 has been very different because I've taken it slowly. I've taken it a lot more methodically. I've worked on smaller aspects due to the injury, but I've had to like, okay, let's get this better, and then let's get this better, and then let's get this better. And doing that has been a very big realization, because now I'm able to apply that in different parts of my life, right? When it comes to the other thing that I'm doing with motorcycles, when it comes to real estate and advancing, this injuries caused me to sit back and think of how I grow and how I move forward and apply that into different aspects of my life. It's not about trying to get better at everything at the same time. When you do that, you will fucking get hurt, right? Because you're trying to do too much. But taking it back and nitpicking it, like, what am I doing now? Let's get this locked down. Once that's it, let's move on to something else. And putting myself in that position where I'm trying to be better than I was and hurting myself kind of really put that big juxtaposition there. Like, hey, bro, slow down, work on one thing, get it right, get it knocked out, then move on to the other. Because trying to do everything at the same time is just not, it's not, that's how you get hurt, right? So that's been 2023 for me, in a summary. And I also had a different situation. So we're going to call it a family medical situation, that happened and occurred kind of without my knowledge, which is very reminiscent of an experience that I had about 6 years ago. I'm not going to get too far into depth with it, but there was a situation that happened in the past where I approached it with a certain frame of mind and had a very big negative effect on me mentally and emotionally. It drained me, and it took a lot out of me in terms of energy. Where this medical situation that happened this year, it did to the same effect, because it's more of a reactive reflex that we have as humans. But my ability to separate what I'm doing in life and this situation and manage the two of them has been eye-opening, just because of how different it is. There was a similar situation in the past. There's this situation that happened this year, and having those two things put in juxtaposition, similar to baseball in the past and baseball now, has like really opened up what I've done and how I've realized it. So throughout the year, there's always been these little bits of, hey, this happened before and now it's different. And hey, this happened before and now it's different. So 2023 for me was a very big year of realization and where I stand. That was a lot. So
That was a lot. Listen, if I had to break that down a little bit, dude, and I don't know if you did it intentionally or not, and maybe you don't agree with what I would say, but it sounds like sports and the competition gives you a piece of purpose, right?
yes.
Just whether it's competing, whether it's just being a better version of yourself, right? Um, I'm interested to unpack something that you said about conscious mind and subconscious mind. So I want to ask that question in a second, and then we can segue back to where we were going.
Okay.
Um, then I broke down like trying to slow down to speed up, right? It sounds like you're really, I mean, that's one of the corny phrases of my life, right? And I say that all the time. It's like you got to slow down to speed up, right? And then compound that with a 1% better mentality, which is another one of my favorite mindsets. So, and then you had a lot of emotion, which, by the way, 6 years ago is practically when I met you, because I met you when you were going through that area of opportunity, right? So, but then you go through something like that, the amount of emotion that goes through all of that, and all energy or all emotion is just energy and motion, right? So the amount of emotion that you had to put forward, put out there into the universe just to unpack everything that was happening is super draining. So, but I'm gonna go back to the subconscious versus conscious mindset. Just take me through what do you mean by that? What was like a takeaway of splitting it up by that? What do you mean by that?
Just so I can be clear about what you're asking, what specific aspect of the subconscious and conscious are you trying to refer to? Like, what
You just
specifically are you?
you had mentioned something about 2023 for you, like it was a year of realization, growth, and via conscious and unconscious. So what do you mean by that? What growth did you make, and how did you separate the two?
Gotcha. So when I mean by conscious and subconscious growth, the conscious growth is my actual thing that I'm trying to achieve, right? This is what I
Okay.
want to do. This is where I want to be. How do I fill that gap? That's the conscious growth. The unconscious growth and the unconscious realization is more or less what I meant is the life situations that I was put in, right? There's always lessons out there that life will put you in for you to learn and grow. And this year, life put me in a bunch of situations to where I realized the unconscious growth that I've had, right? The lessons that I've learned, what I've done, and where I want to be, all that subconsciously is stuff that happens that you don't realize, right? You learn and grow as you move forward. When it's not intentional growth, it's unconscious growth because life forces you to grow and move forward. There's a lot of people that want to resist that. But in this sense, there's a lot of unconscious growth that I had in the past that's now been made conscious or brought up just simply due to the juxtaposition of the similarity in situation and difference in how it's being handled. So that's really just what I meant is just like that unconscious growth that I wasn't aware of at the time has been brought up and been present for this year.
100%. Nope. There's a good Latin phrase I want you to look up. Maybe and we can. You asked me about stoicism a couple weeks ago, but amor fati, for the love of fate. So kind of segues into what you just said. And I guess for me is just like loving every scenario you're in for life, despite what the external world may tell you. Like externally, we may feel like it's a bad opportunity, we're struggling through life, etc. We're falling apart, we're losing our bills, whatever it may be, right? And to your point, and to Amor Fati's point, is you have to love what you're going through right now because you're going through it for a reason. And
Yeah.
until you can, I call it the record of life. Until you can learn what you're supposed to be going through at that moment, or you can just get past the short term pain. The long term is going to be worth it, right? So, just for love of faith. Anyways, cool. That's what I thought, man. But I wanted to hear your take on where your head was with that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like honestly, it's just one of those things that like hit you and then you're like, "Oh crap, man, I'm different now. I really am." But for 2023 for you, where would you say that this year fell as a whole, like in the category of years compared to other years? What would you say this 2023 was for you?
I have a hard time saying things out loud now that I feel like are good, because I don't feel like I don't want to have an ego, and I don't want to have or overstep my humility boundary. All right,
Yeah.
so 2023, Heather and I always joke around. Odd years are typically our most trying years, and even years are our most successful years. And if we look back in my history, it almost syncs up to be true. So 2023 being an odd year, you said something earlier to me before we jumped on, was just discussing like I don't want to think about trials and tribulations. So I don't want to say it was a tough year, because I would feel like I'd be ungrateful to what life has thrown me. But it was definitely it was a better year if I stacked it up statistically of what I overall accomplished. Um, we bought a house this year, and given our financial scenario a few years ago and what we've had to overcome to be here, and where we started at, and that's a whole nother conversation, but where Heather and I started at getting married. Uh, for every success, we should have never been successful statistically, right? So for what we've accomplished this year, we bought a house, we finally settled down a little bit. I feel like that was a big win, and a big set of weight that was lifted off of my shoulders because we've been in what 5 states in 4 years now,
Yeah.
and that's been exhausting. So the win itself is settling down for a few years in Pennsylvania. The other side of it is that we finally were able to purchase our first house, right? So I feel pretty good about where we stand on some of our goals. The other side of it, I would say, that I'm proud of in a sense of how I could stack it. I would probably say my top three, if you want me to answer your question specifically. My top 3 years was, to your point, a lot of realization about oneself throughout this past year. Everything, dude. It's really weird, man. I was listening to something by Jim Carrey the other day. Um, but you have to have like an unyielding amount of belief in your ability to manifest. And if you do that, you can literally manifest anything. And that was like a realization that I came through really over the past year with timelines that we put in place. And dude, there's things I told Heather like years ago. when we first started dating that we would hit this goal by this time, right, et cetera. We'd be here, and almost to a point where like I had an image in my head 10 years ago what our house would look like, what we're doing, where we'd be at in life, and sure enough, we're here. So happy I'm here, but it kind of scared me a little bit and said, holy crap, man! Like you can create your future, and what you think today is where you're going to be at in 5 years from now. So I guess it's a two-part scenario for me. It's like, okay, this is what we were thinking about 5 years ago. That was the goal, and I can remember that. That was a scary realization. The other piece of it is like, okay, I don't have the next 5 years figured out, and I really need to figure that out now because if I was able to make this happen in 5 years and I wasn't all the way in on that belief, I was like, yeah, this is where I want to be, and I was dreaming about it,
Right.
right? And then it happened. So now it's like, all right, if I can hardcore meditate and manifest what I want to do in the next 5 years or 3 years, like I can absolutely make it happen because I'm gonna have more energy around it, like more positive, 100% dire belief in what I'm thinking. And then that's what kind of scared me a little bit. If I took my notes yesterday and I really thought about, where I want to be at for 2024. So top 3 year for us for sure. I wouldn't call it a top year quite yet, only because there was a lot of areas that I think I could have been better at. It was a very overwhelming year with changing jobs and moving different states, stuff like that. So there's a lot of unproductive time I think I left on the table,
Yeah.
and for that reason, I wouldn't qualify as a top year.
Interesting. So, what would you say, just in kind of summary of 23, what would you say is just a couple of bullet points that you are proud of for the year? Just some accomplishments or some results, regardless of if it was intentional or not. But what are you proud of for the year of 2023? I mean, anything, just like even just buying a house, man. I know that's something that you've wanted for forever.
That would probably be the thing I was most proud of, right? Was just buying a house. And I bought the house in regards to leverage it as an investment platform later on. So I'm proud about that, and I'm learning through that. To your point, I'm learning to navigate things that I've never navigated before. Second thing I'm probably proud of, that I really didn't intend on, like, but I thought about it, is I really wanted to get into weightlifting and to get into a really good physical routine, right? So I got bored a couple years ago. I ran, and I got bored of it. Wasn't really challenged by it, to your point, from a competitive perspective. So I really got into weightlifting this year. Made a lot of progress, in my opinion. I can feel it. I can see it. I'm happy with how I'm progressing. I haven't put a specific time on it because I feel like in years past, I've always been I've never been a physically fit dude. I've always played sports, so I could always compete, but I've never been like physically fit in that regard.
Yeah.
So, and I've always put timelines on it, and putting a timeline on something creates an unnecessary expectation sometimes, right? And it's okay to have an expectation. I have an end goal. They always say begin with the end in mind. I have that, right? However, I just felt like, oh, I'm going to be this weight and this size in 6 months is unrealistic because I didn't build I read Atomic Habits this year by James Clear. It's a great book.
Yeah.
And he just says you have to make, just make 1% progress. That's all. That's all I want to do, man.
Yeah.
So like I have to wake up in the morning and just put my gym clothes on. And then that probably leads to me going to the gym more often. I have to dress like I'm going to be more physically fit, etc. So I put in a lot of time this year. We got a gym at the house now, and I picked up a bench press, all kinds of shit. I made progress on it, dude, and I have no expectation. My goal is just to do it, just to build a repetition around it, so that way I can build that into my lifestyle and it becomes natural, right? And it just becomes something that I expect of myself. And it's work, man. Like I don't have an expectation per se. I have more goals for myself in 2024 that I want to start hitting because I've seen the progress. I'm like, damn, I haven't really made set goals. I've just been pushing myself. And then the other day I was lifting something, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put some more weight on it. I won't go too high instead of weight, right? Because I don't want to hurt myself. But I put it on there and I was able to do it easily. And when I think about that, I didn't even realize the fact that um, I was able to do more, and my mind had to put a lid. It was like, all right, dude, this is all you can do, right? So I just increased it by 20 pounds, and it was like, all right, I can do that easily. Still hit my same rep goal, and then I'm like, all right, let me stack another 15 on there just to see what happens if I can just at least get one rep safely. And I was able to. So I'm like, hold up, I'm just creating these lids for myself because I have a numbers expectation. And I read an article that somewhere said, hey, you shouldn't increase your weight by more than 10% over X amount of months. So I kind of stuck to that. But in turn, I was doing myself a disservice and I was limiting my growth potential. And I think that's like a story for life, right there, right? As I think we lit ourselves so much. I
No,
think we talked about it last week.
dude, do you remember? So back when we used to work together, there was a book that you had me read, and it was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership,
Yep,
John
the law of the
Maxwell.
lid.
The law of the lid, right? So it's interesting because 23, this is I guess it could be my last point in 23, and it's a perfect segue off of that. Is like, when you think about it, we read that in the law of the lid, right? The business is only going to grow as much as its top leader, right? So what this is the max that you're ever going to get. Everyone else below you or, under you in that company is never going to grow past this, right? But it's very interesting because in 2023, I realized that everything's kind of the same, right? There are very few things that do a lot. And that law of the lid that we learned in leadership, the simple fact that it can be applied to yourself for physical growth, and it's something that you realize kind of puts that into perspective. Because in 2023, I realized that it's not necessarily about doing everything, but it's about doing the very key specific things that need to get done. For me, it was in regards to this, but I don't have to do this much work to get better. I can do this much work, but this much work needs to be exactly what I need to get better, right? I don't need to do the rest of the fluff over there, because if I already got that locked down, it's not going to help me. But this particular portion of what it is what I actually need to work on. And it's very interesting that you were able to kind of like process the law of the lid differently and bring it into a different aspect. But
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are just listening to this, I would say the law of the lid is probably arguably the most important law in your step to growing in general. And that's right. And I hate about knowing it out loud is that the amount of lids that we put on ourselves, man, every single day, and everything we do subconsciously without even
right.
knowing it, because we're a product of the environment that we live in. And that was another segue into the Atomic Habits book, is that environment changes everything. How many podcasts, how many people do you listen to that are influential that discuss the people that you hang around with? That's a common topic of conversation. Who you surround yourself with. What do they say about men? Give me the 10 friends and I can show you the man, or something like that, whatever it may be. So when you think about that, the environment alone then subconsciously creates a lid, and being 1% incrementally more aware of that every day, I think has probably been a realization for me. And I wouldn't say like that's my goal in 2023 was, but I think that's, as I start to get older, I start to become more aware of that. And I'm like, okay, like, why have I been doing it this way? Or why do I only think I can make it this far? And then when you start to see it out loud, you're just like, holy shit, man. Okay. All right. Everybody's got their own journey. Everybody's on a different level, and they're all in a different chapter in their book. So you have to be aware of all of those things. And it's really the only competition you have is yourself in your own mind. Right. So, and you have to figure that piece out. We often, I think, we're competing with other people, and we're not. We're not competing with other people. We're competing with our mind and how we view other people and how we view ourselves inside of our head. So, anyways, sorry.
Nah, no worries, man. Go ahead. I think you had a question for me for moving forward, 2024. I think we should talk about that topic. You just got done, so go ahead. I think you got a question for me about 24 moving forward.
I do, man. This is probably the best one. So, what change do you want to see in yourself going forward in 2024?
That's exactly what I'm working on for 2024. That's a good one. All right, so for 2024 this year, I'm not going to set particular goals. Me and my wife, we have for the last couple of years sat down, set specific goals that we individually want to achieve, some things that we want to achieve together. That will still happen. But in terms of 2024 for me, the gist isn't going to be specific outcomes. The gist is going to be those little specific inputs that I need to do to get the outcomes. So there's a lot of things that I'm going to work on that just simply are, they're not complex. They're just being consistent and those daily tasks, right? So with what we were just talking about earlier, there are certain actions that I want to take that will get the results. So just to put a little story behind it, My wife and I were out with some friends at a restaurant. They have the friends that were there. They have a 1-year-old. We were ordering food, and after we ordered food, we all gave our menus back to the waitress, and the 1-year-old was sitting there coloring with the thing. And when we all gave our menus back, they closed up and handed their 1-year-old menu back to the other person. And this is it's legit like a 1-year-old. Like, they don't understand what's going on, but it just made it very clear that babies try to figure out exactly what's happening around their environment and fitting in. We as adults, even myself at the age of 30, we do the same thing. It's just now subconscious and we don't think about it. So I want to put myself in situations where I subconsciously succeed. So some of the goals that I have is to surround myself with growth. I want to be intentional around the people that I talk to. I want to be intentional about the conversations that I have. I want to be intentional about who I spend time with, because subconsciously, whether I want to or not, I will find a way to fit in. It has nothing to do with me, but just like that baby passing back the menu because they realized what was happening, we do that at the age of whatever we are, right? So if I put myself in a room, in an environment with people that want to succeed, people that want to thrive, us having these types of conversations, I will force myself to have the growth that I want to have, right? I don't have to fight for it to a certain extent outside of putting myself in this situation. So being consistent with those little inputs that get the big result. Being with someone that knows the business that I want to have or knows the type of business that I want to invest in. Surrounding myself with, for example, this podcast. This is going to be a yearly thing for everybody that's watching this. We're going to move forward and have conversations about growth and how we process life, and hopefully we can pass on some information to you guys. But that's kind of the gist for 24, man. It's what are those specific actions? How can I do those and be consistent with them? Figure out what inputs I need to get the output and have those inputs. Those are some strange, those are just some strange tools that have come into realization for me. And it's not it's not something that you have to force yourself to learn. It's something that you can learn by just being, right? A lot of those unconscious lessons that I learned over time were due to situations just like this. And I'm trying to force myself into that unconscious thing where I can look back and say, hey, this is what happened, but I now know it was because of this action. So that's 2024 for me, man. Honestly, committing to a certain level of consistency and putting myself in those situations where I'm forced to grow regardless of whatever that outcome is I want. So I'm chasing my outcomes a little bit differently. For 2024 for you, what is the biggest change that you want to see in yourself personally?
Take the plunge. If I had to define it into 3 words, I think I've always thought that I know this is probably going to sound super egotistical, but it's not meant to be that way, man. I've always thought that I have tremendous value, that I'm selling myself short a lot.
Yeah.
I hear it a lot from other people. People always, people have told me for years, man, to start a podcast, right? So I still got to figure out the comfort level on that piece of it. But being uncomfortable and just taking the plunge is probably the biggest thing that I want to see in 2024 for myself. Um, I feel like as I've grown older as a father, as a husband, you start setting into that maturity aspect of life where I feel like you start to level out a little bit. Promotions don't happen as quickly. Time, takes a little bit longer in that sense, because you can only scale so quickly. I feel like I've internally and subconsciously told myself, that you've got all the time in the world, bro. Right. And I agree with that. We're young, but at the same time, it's just like you really don't. And that comes back to another Latin phrase. It's memento mori, right? It's like, remember that you'll die. And that's not meant to be graphic and or dark, by any means, but it's like, dude, like you don't have time. We don't know how long we've got specifically, right? And that could be anything from macro environment to trends to timing, etc. So it's like I just want to take the plunge. I want to see where that takes me. Now, what am I taking the plunge into? I mean, the podcast is one of them, but it's going to be other things that I want to look at. And I almost want that to be the motto for myself, like having different conversations, meeting people that I wouldn't normally talk to, going to different environments and shifting different things. I just want to take the plunge that I normally would say, now's not the right time, or hey, I'm not ready for that quite yet, or hey, I'm always trying to hold myself back, I think. And I think our brain operates in a comfort mode, and that goes back to the law of the lid, trying to save ourselves from disappointment. Right. So I really need to get extremely comfortable with failure this year, because I've been comfortable with failure. I can remember it. I struggled, I hustled, I grinded to get to where I'm at now. I felt like I've let off the gas a little bit, and I've coasted off of just my experience. And I don't want to do that, because I'm not old enough to leverage experience at that scale where I could do that, in my opinion. I don't have that much experience. So
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to take the plunge, and I'm going to try to put myself in some really uncomfortable waters this year. So that way I can just grow to another level, and I can start to escalate my timelines to certain things. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I'd like to make another point about 24, which is actually it's kind of interesting. So the things that I'm chasing, like I said, they're not specific bullet points, but there is one, and it does apply to everything, right? It's one of those mindset things, kind of like the law of the lid. Once you limit yourself in a certain way, it kind of limit yourself everywhere. And back to the baseball thing, man. There was a specific task that needed to be accomplished when I was in ninth grade and 10th grade to be part of the baseball team, right? And that was run a sub 6 minute mile. Thinking about me running a sub 6 minute mile, there was an aspect, a kind of drive, and it's very similar to what I mentioned with baseball that I had while on that run. I can remember the specific moment where I made the decision to do it, right? And it was kind of like mid-run, right? There was a period where you start, and a 6 minute mile is a minute and a half every lap, right? So there's 4 laps, 6 minutes, right? So there was a midway point where I was on time, but I made the physical, not the physical, but the mental commitment to get it done. At that time, when you're pushing yourself, basically running for a mile, which was physically hard. I'm not a runner, right? This is for baseball. It's completely different. Like, this wasn't a regular occurrence. If you run track and field, people do it all the time, but it's still a boundary that a lot of people don't push to. And on that run, there was a voice in my head that was activated, honestly, when I made the decision to do it and keep going, right? Because at about lap 3, I remember a very severe cramp just coming. It happens. And at that time, coach had told me that they saw a heavier person, 240, 260, something like that, throw up mid run and continue going and keep going. And that clicked in my head. I made the decision to go. And there was a voice, there was a level of commitment there that I don't think I've had for forever. And part of the goal that I want to achieve this year through physical gain, whether that be at the gym or through baseball, is finding that voice, right? Finding that specific, like, minute and a half of my life where I just completely 100% committed to making this happen, and I got it done. Because that doesn't pop up very often. I've noticed over the course of time, that voice, that drive has gone away. Not a good thing at all, right? But bringing that back out and applying it to different aspects of life. And it's one of the things that I've been, I guess, working towards. Similarly with playing baseball, getting physically fit, I've been chasing that mentality. And 2024 is the year that I find it. I don't know how I'm going to find it, but one of my goals is to get that inner voice in my head back. That, like, I don't even know how to put it, but honestly, that inner you can do this. That's one of the things that I'm going to find this year. I don't know how, and that's how I'm kind of taking my actions, is to kind of build that back into myself. And that's how I think I'll do it. But that's 100% needs to happen. There's no way to succeed moving forward if that doesn't happen.
That's kind of the voice that I found. That's a good way to put it. I almost want to like turn that into a quote, because that's the voice that told me to up your weight by 45 pounds and just see what happens. And I did that incrementally, right? So I did 25 pounds and 20 pounds. I'm like, holy shit. that wasn't that bad. Right. Because I think, again, you're only probably operating in life at maybe like, let's just call it 70%, effort. And there's a lot of content that discusses that. David Goggins discusses that. Andrew Huberman discusses that. There's a lot of different people that discuss that. So what you just said, that was that voice. And to your point, I also feel the same way. I don't hear that voice very often. I heard it that moment just a few weeks ago, and I did it. So I got to leverage and I got to dig deep to find that voice again. And maybe we've just, again, our brain has probably just blocked it to keep us comfortable, to not worry about failure, rejection. So then it comes back to the law of the lid. And I don't even think we intended on this. We literally have subconsciously put a lid over our behaviors for X amount of time, not even being aware of it. And that voice has been suppressed. And the older that we get, the more comfortable we want to be. And that goes back to and I just go back to your baseball conversation, and something that I noticed, and I didn't even say anything about it, but it was just like, when we're younger, can you remember? I mean, listen, man, I skateboarded for 14 years. I can still skateboard now. I remember playing baseball. I could tell you times where I would roll an ankle, bro. I'd roll an ankle at the skate park, hardcore, put a brace on it, and then I had a baseball game the next day. And I played baseball at a decent level, and I would go play ball, and I would just run, right? Now, if we get hurt, we're like walking around with a brace. We're trying to ease pressure. It was like there's a lid now that says, hey, dude, don't do it. Don't get hurt. Let's baby ourselves into this, right? Where back then we just were kamikaze, so to speak, man. We just did it and we just operated. And if we got hurt, we just said, fuck it. I've got to play ball tomorrow. I'm not being benched tomorrow, right? So let's talk about the bench of life for a second. Are you willing to ride the bench when you get hurt or when you get tweaked? Are you willing to go out there and give it everything you got? So that's just something I took away when you were talking about something a little bit ago, is that we're being too safe with one another. We're trying to safeguard ourselves, our feelings, fear of failure, fear of lack of respect, or what other people think about us, etc. Right? So the way that I break everything down, and I took everything that you had said, and I took everything that I had said and or meant, and I broke it down into 6 bullet points, just to recap, in very short words. Intentionality: be more intentional with your time and with your goals. Environment change is changing your environment to be more conducive for your future setting, right? Whatever that mindset, whatever you're manifesting, wherever you want to be, looking at just changing the environment to allow yourself to succeed on the skill that you want to succeed at. Make sure that your behaviors are congruent with how I feel or how you feel. So do you have the behaviors that are congruent to what you're trying to accomplish, whatever, with no timeline? Consistency overall, just, that's easy. Take the plunge. That's the way I look at it in my head, is just taking the plunge today, tomorrow, and every day. And then last but not least, finding that voice.
I have one final question for you.
Go.
One final question. So in regards to the show, in regards to this podcast for 2023, 2024, if there's anybody out there that listens to this, what suggestion would you have to anyone out there for 2024? Just one thing, one random piece of advice, just one bit of knowledge and information from what you learned last year and what you're trying to do this year. What would that piece of information be for you?
Remove expectations. Like, you can have goals. There's a difference between having a goal and then having expectations. I think expectations made me freeze for a while. And I don't mean that negatively. You hear it all the time. It's loosely discussed, and not having expectations of those around you, people, etc. And I never really understood what that meant. And then when I did start to learn it, I realized that at first I was like, oh, it's just negative. Like, you got to have expectations, right? But as I started to study like Stoicism, and I get a little bit deeper into loosely defining what I want out of myself, it's like, okay, I have an expectation of where I would like to be, but I don't have any micro expectations. It's probably how I would look at it. Like, it's like, hey, yes, I want to be physically fit and healthy, right? Okay, that's my expectation of myself. And everything that I do from here on out is going to be just one day at a time. And I think, Ed Mylett talks about it. But it's just like, just make one decision each day. It doesn't have to be a tremendous amount of decisions. You can raise the stakes, sure. And that's, again, it goes back to the atomic habit conversation. and changing your environment, doing, 5 minutes a day, then 10 minutes a day, whatever it may be. But just get to the fucking gym, whatever it looks like, whatever, if it's running for half a mile, a quarter of a mile, like nobody's watching you. And if they are, they're not going to remember who the fuck you are when they leave that gym because they got their own shit. Every one of us has their own shit going on, right? So just remove the expectation of the outside world from yourself for a second and just start somewhere without expectation. Put your gym shoes on, go to the gym, eat one more piece of fruit a day or one more vegetable a day than you did the prior day, right? Just make one small decision that can compound into the next day and stop having expectations of yourself. Right off the rip, have an end goal, begin with the end in mind. For sure, I want to be healthier, but what is healthier to you and me are two separate conversations right now, right? We all have the poster child of what health should look like that's been created by society, and that could be our goal. But I just want to be 1% better every day, and that's probably a realization I had in 2023 that I'm going to continue to compound on in 2024. Just remove the expectation, my friends. I'll ask you the same question.
I asked, but I didn't think about it. Honestly, so for passing on, I would say that in 2024, try to learn and realize that we perceive things differently ourselves as individuals, like you, whoever you are out there, you perceive stuff differently than the best way to perceive it. And the simple fact, the simple way to explain that is whatever situation happens, right? If something's ever happened to you or a family member at the same time, and you two reacted differently, it's because of who you are, right? Because of what you've been through, because of the past, because how your personality is. Which reaction benefits you more, your personal reaction or the reaction that someone else had? And understand that they did that for a reason. If you can find your reason to react the better way to whatever that situation is, do it. It's like we're all in our heads all the time, and it's all the best or the worst to us or ourselves. But when you take a step back and you look at a situation, just remember it isn't exactly as you first see it. Take a step back, take some time to process the information that's in front of you, and try not to react to whatever it is that's happening. So in 2024, understand that you don't have to react. You can think, you can process, and then you can put out whatever it is that you want to help you get to whatever it is. There's not specifics behind that just because I don't know, right? But just think and process and understand that whatever it is that your initial reaction is, it can always be different. Always.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap, man. Until next time.